My Dear Friend Nokotan was probably one of the most anticipated animes to come out. From the memes to people making covers for the opening song, it seemed that this was going to be one of the most memorable animes, not just in the year of 2024, but also in general. It was probably going to be a staple in anime. Well, that's not exactly the case, because while technically it does still get mentions, but as time went on and as new episodes came by, people just simply started to forget about this series or didn't really talk about it as much as they initially did, which really surprised me. But as the weeks went by, I kind of got the idea as to why this series fell off for so many people and why the initial hype of this series just started fading away as the episodes kept coming. Of course, there isn't just one answer as to why this anime fell off, but there's multiple reasons as to why many people probably were just uninterested, so much so that even during the finale of the series, it still didn't get any conversation whatsoever, and people just didn't even know that the series ended only until a few people mentioned it. But before we talk about all of that, let's start from the beginning. And I will say that the marketing of this anime was very clever, and I would say that this is probably one of the best marketings that I've seen for an anime. Usually when an anime is about to come up, in order to get people's attention, in order for people to anticipate this series from coming out, they usually do the typical things, which is to release a key visual and release trailers for the anime. But the marketing team for My Dear Friend Nokotan did things a bit differently. While they did release key visuals and trailers, they also released something that will completely break the internet, and that is the Shikanoko dance. To say that this dance left a huge impact is an understatement. The moment it was released, a lot of people were already invested and it got instantly popular. You saw it all over Twitter, you saw it all over TikTok. There were many people making this dance even before the anime came out, and this already made people's expectations that this was not only going to be a modern classic, but this was going to be an anime that is going to be hard to forget, and many people will even talk about it even after it ended. And this of course piqued people's curiosity, and we're waiting very anxiously to see what the first episode has to offer, since this dance alone was enough for people to think that there's more great things to come once the episodes finally come out. And while the first episode was a huge success and many people were talking about this anime because of the wacky things that were happening from the animation, the CGI, but of course, no surprising, Nokotan herself, the dear girl, every time she was on, she managed to steal the spotlight and make it such a very insane but also funny scene whenever she was involved. And then moving to episode 2, people were expecting much more greater things, and we did manage to get that in episode 2. But we also got introduced to a character that a lot of people, whether you love them or hate them, are always something that stands out a lot in animes, and that is Anko, who not only has a sister complex, but she is a yandere, and she shows very quickly just how unhinged she is in her first appearance. And in fact, episode 2 was basically dedicated to her and her resolve to keep Koshi all to herself from Nokotan. And while this episode was good and hilarious, in my opinion, this was where the series' attention slowly started to fade, as by episode 3 there was little to no conversation about episode 3, which was surprising because it wasn't really a bad episode and it was still hilarious and fun as the other 2 episodes that came before. But as episode 4, 5, 6, 7 came out, you started to see that at this point no one was really starting to pay attention to this anime. It wasn't until episode 9, during a funny moment between Koshi and Nokotan, that people once again started talking about it. But after that, again, silence, and even during the finale, no one really seemed to pay attention to this anime ever again. And there's a lot of reasons as to why this may have happened. You could argue that the lineup of the Summer Anime 2024 was really what could have caused this decline of attention to this anime. You have to remember that this was during the same season that Alia, Oshinoko, and other great animes were airing during this season. So you could make the argument that because of the other series' more popularity, My Dear Friend Nokotan's popularity started to fade very quickly. But once you actually take a good look at the series in and of itself, you can kind of see a few things that may have made people lose interest in this anime. One of the things is of course the comedy. Now, while comedy is subjective, My Dear Friend Nokotan does have a lot of references to other forms of media that unless you know where this reference is from, you're going to have no idea what they are talking about or where this is all coming from. But even putting the references aside, the whole formula of My Dear Friend Nokotan is exactly like this. Nokotan, who is a half deer, half human, does a lot of crazy things, and the main character, Koshi, is trying to process everything that she's seeing with her very own eyes. Not to mention that the whole world of Nokotan is very strange, as everyone seems to have let's just say, unique personalities that really make them stand out. Now, this format can work for a while, but if you keep repeating the same jokes or the same kind of comedy formats, then really it starts to get old for some people, as they could just consider this as just simply them recycling jokes that they have already done, hoping that it gets the same reaction as the other previous joke. Another reason why this could have also led the cause of My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan's popularity declining is just simply that there was not really a plot in the anime. While the anime was considered a comedy, and these kind of shows don't really have to have a plot, even comedy series like Konosuba, while it does have a ton of jokes and funny moments and parodies the isekai genre in and of itself, it also does have an actual plot, which is of course seeing the journey of Kazuma and his group trying to defeat the demon lord of the world while having these wacky adventures as they go along the way. And while you could make the argument that My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan was trying to be episodic, meaning that you didn't have to watch all the episodes in order to not enjoy it, there are other series that were able to do things much more better. Like for example, a series that I watched not too long ago was Urusei Yatsura. While it did have many episodes I didn't have to follow in order, it still had a few moments that was able to balance the comedy, which is heartwarming, very emotional, but also serious moments between the characters, more specifically the relationship between Ataru and Lum. While at first there was no progress in the relationship between them, slowly you start to see that some episodes that contain moments that showed that Ataru started to care for Lum and didn't mind being around her for such a long time, something in which we didn't see in the beginning, as Ataru did not want to be anywhere near Lum whatsoever. So by having some character progression or having these very wholesome moments between characters, it not only made people get invested, but it made people want to watch till the very end, something which you didn't really have that feeling when watching My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan, because there was very little character progression or very little character moments throughout its run. Not only that, but also underutilized some of the characters. For example, Anko, the literal yandere, was barely used even after episode 2. After episode 2, she was just a background character, and while she did have a few scenes, they were not really that memorable and they were just very short compared to the spotlight that she had in episode 2 of the series. And then you have Bashame, who seemed to be a girl who was admiring No-Ko-Tan and also had a huge love for Rice, was also pushed to the side, and we didn't really get any moments with her as well. In fact, the only good moment that she had was with Anko, in which it seemed that Anko was slowly starting to get used to Bashame and didn't mind being around her, which to me was a really good moment, and it really showed that despite their two different personalities, they can both still get along and be friends. These kind of moments were necessary, and I feel like had they added more moments between other characters apart from just Koshi and No-Ko-Tan, we could have gotten more and more people invested where everything was going to lead and go. But sadly that didn't happen, and after that there was barely any interactions between Anko and Bashame. And that's probably one of the huge problems with the series, as once again, like I mentioned earlier, they didn't really utilize all the characters that they had. The only focus of this series was always around Koshi and No-Ko-Tan, and while their dynamic wasn't bad, I just wish we could have seen more character interactions with many different kinds of characters, since the anime was able to showcase that there are more bizarre people in this world and that No-Ko-Tan isn't the only weird one, despite her literally being a deer girl. There was this one character who goes by the name of Neko-chan who wanted to take down the deer club that Koshi and No-Ko-Tan created for the sake of No-Ko-Tan, as it's revealed that Neko-chan has some sort of jealousy towards Koshi for all her accomplishments and she being considered the most popular girl in school, and while she does try to take down this club, she always fails miserably. It's these kind of moments that really make us more interested in the other side characters more if they do stuff like this, but unfortunately, just like Anko, she didn't really have a ton of moments that really made her stand out and become a memorable character of this series. And it's a shame really, because apart from just her, there were just a bunch of other characters that I feel could have had their own spotlight and become memorable and become special in their own way, but sadly that never happened, and as time went on they were used less and less until the very finale when they finally decided to bring all the characters back out again for one last time. But even by then it was probably too late, as I wouldn't be surprised if some people forgot about these characters and were only reminded that they existed in the end when everything was about to be over. And that's a great shame, because visually this series was really good. It was very telling that Wit Studios put in the effort and creativity in their animation. It was well done, and even with the moments where they had bad CGI, you can tell it was done on purpose for comedic factors, and that is something that I really appreciate because it just made some moments even funnier. But as we've seen from time to time, animation can only get you so far, and even if the series does have good animation, animation, if there's nothing actually interesting going on, then people are very quickly going to be turned off, and this is just going to lead them to watch something else that is interesting or gets their attention right away. Now, would have this series gone better if there was some sort of plot? Well, that's all hypothetical, and I really don't know what kind of plot would fit into My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan, but if there was a plot, I feel like it could have been a little bit better. I don't know, depending on how well the plot was or how interesting. I feel like this could have gotten people to still watch from beginning to end instead of just simply dropping it midway, like some people have admitted when discussing this series. So overall, My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan had a strong start and had an interesting initiative, and let's just be honest, it had some good marketing. I feel like if the marketing didn't go all out from the start, I feel like a lot of people would have probably missed this series. But due to the memes and due to the dance, I feel like it just got people to expect something greater than it was initially supposed to be. And I feel like that's also another factor is as well. A lot of people had great expectations for this anime because of everything that came out. They thought it was going to be some like high tier comedy show with some peak stuff going in between as well, but it didn't really result to that. And I feel like with that realization, it just made people not want to watch any further. I had to watch it beginning to end to see if there was something else going on, because of course I was planning on making a video of this series, but nothing really came up that really made me think, wow, this is a great anime that's going to be talked about till the end of time. And while there are some memes still being created, the anime has just simply come and go. I don't think a lot of people really want to talk about it any further other than just simply reminding everyone that this was one of the most hypest shows of the summer anime season of 2024, only for it to go downhill. And I think it's just a really good case of just how hype can sometimes kill an anime, as a lot of people were expecting so much more than what it was, and because of that same hype, it ultimately became its own downfall. I think hype is oftentimes something that makes or breaks a series. If there is no hype, not many people are going to tune in, but if there's too much hype, people are going to expect much more things than what it is. And I wouldn't be surprised that if the near future My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan is going to be used as to what happens when hype overtakes an anime and that becomes its own downfall and can result into the series being completely killed because of it. I think that would be an interesting way to see things from now on. But on the other hand, you could also see that in the near future, you could see the marketing for My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan as something that a lot of people who are good at marketing will want to replicate. How revealing a few things about a series or just in general anything overall can lead to people wanting to see more of it, and it could get popular in just a short amount of time with the discussions, the memes, etc., all because of good marketing. And that is something that we'll just have to wait and see if another series is able to market just as good as My Dear Friend No-Ko-Tan. So if you are interested in turning off your brain, then this anime is for you. But if you expect something more than just simply a bunch of gags and random funny moments, then prepare to be disappointed, because that's basically this whole anime in a nutshell. But yeah, that's where I'm going to leave things off. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.